Welcome to The Ride Inside with Mark Barnes, a podcast about the mental, emotional, and social aspects of motorcycling, brought to you by the BMW Motorcycle Owners of America and the MOA Foundation. Mark Barnes is a clinical psychologist and motojournalist with decades of experience in both fields. But nothing in this podcast should be considered a way to diagnose or treat mental illness. We're all just trying to get through this thing called life, and motorcycles are one of the ways we do it. If you're in a crisis, or ride a KTM, please seek professional help. We'd love to answer your questions too, so send them to podcast@bmwmoa.org.
Hi, you're listening to The Ride Inside. I'm Mark Barnes, and this essay is entitled The Last Ride. Every generation has its own apocalyptic fears based on the events and possibilities of its era. This fact can be employed in arguments minimizing the threat du jour as just one more passing fad we needn't take seriously. While this line of reasoning offers some comfort, it would be a logical fallacy to take the lack of nuclear holocaust when I was doing bomb drills in elementary school as evidence there's no reason to worry about anything like that now. We cannot know just how imminent doomsday might be, but it does seem the stakes keep getting higher and the number of potential cataclysms continues to rise. Additionally, each of us has our own shelf life, regardless of the planet's longevity. It's a harrowing reality few of us can contemplate for more than a moment, but our unique final hour may have already begun. Astronomical odds don't keep accidents from happening. Disease processes quietly advance unnoticed, and unfathomable disasters constantly occur somewhere, whether created by nature or humankind. There's a maxim, some advance in the face of such existential uncertainty. Live every day like it's your last. It might really be. The idea is we would then do only the most important things, cherishing and using opportunities we otherwise thoughtlessly take for granted and put off until some undefined time in the future, a future we may not live to see. This seems like a good way to get our priorities straight, make the most of our lives, and have fewer regrets when death finally knocks on our door, until we really think it through. I'm not suggesting anyone should ignore their own mortality. Death is a limit that gives life part of its meaning, forcing us to decide how we'll spend the finite resource of time, and throwing what matters most into sharp relief, assuming we do any reflecting on the matter. On the other hand, a preoccupation with loss can obliterate what joy might otherwise infuse existence, replacing it with terror and despair. It's hard to imagine that, on the eve of their execution, the doomed on death row can taste anything, much less savor the aromas and textures of their favorite meal. If I knew our destruction was certain and soon, I would absolutely huddle with loved ones, but it would not be a happy gathering. Short of dying, we're faced with countless other endings, both voluntary and involuntary. As motorcyclists, declining health or the aging process may deprive us of the physical strength, reaction speed, vision, or other capacities required to ride with a reasonable degree of safety. A financial crisis may make owning a bike no longer affordable. Needs of family members may make the undeniable risks of riding impossible to reconcile. While many of us will never recognize our final ride for what it is, some will know all too well. Surely, such outings must be intensely bittersweet. People make bucket lists, hoping to fulfill as many dreams as possible before their time runs out. I assume everyone reading this, or listening to it on the podcast, has at least one riding fantasy of this sort. It might be some epic cross-country adventure or the reunion of a special group of buddies. Perhaps it's a sentimental pilgrimage, near or far, to a personally sacred route or place. Maybe it'd be an attempt to recreate an idyllic trip already taken, when the scenery, weather, and bike involved were all stunningly superlative. Or just the opposite, an effort to replace the memory of a catastrophic outing with a victorious revision. Any such ride would no doubt be infused with rich emotion, but could it really bear all the weight of finality? Of course, this would depend on the individual, but I can't conceive of any ride I'd feel satisfied with as a grand finale. Nothing could orchestrate all my most beloved elements into a suitably climactic symphony. If I were to apply the aforementioned maxim to my riding, then, the effect would be counterproductive. In order to enjoy any ride to its fullest, I need an unlimited time horizon ahead, at least in my mind. Otherwise, the pressure to make every moment count would rob said moments of any chance they might have had to bring me pleasure. I'm reminded of an old job so onerous, my dread of Monday mornings started kicking in on Friday evenings. Weekends became an anguished process of watching my precious time off dwindle relentlessly with every tick of the clock. How could I not feel the same way while those tenths kept turning on the odometer during my final ride? Something similar happens around and during riding droughts. If I know I'll be unable to ride for an extended period because of weather, travel, obligations, or whatever, I become fiercely determined to squeeze in a ride before the window of opportunity closes. The outing that results can sometimes feel more compulsory than recreational, making it a disappointing token. Likewise, when an unexpected day of freakishly dry, sunny warmth arrives in the midst of cold, wet winter, I'm typically faced with two choices. A, frantically scramble to get out on two wheels despite my lack of preparation or the calls of duty elsewhere. Or B, forego the golden opportunity and resentfully carry on with my routine responsibilities. The first option can yield a seriously flawed experience, since undone planning may have been required to add a companion or take the preferred machine, and the anticipated excitement or relaxation may end up contaminated by worries about what's now being left undone at home or office. The second option can be ruined too, with distraction and frustration precluding efficient productivity, the supposed payoff for my sacrifice. I've taken both paths, and the second is definitely worse, when the day ends with neither a ride nor much accomplishment. As the saying goes, a bad day on a motorcycle is still better than a good day at work. While not always true, there's a good reason for the adage. What about the first ride of spring? As exhilarating as it can be to once again emerge from the dreary deprivation of winter, climbing back in the saddle can bring unwelcome discoveries. The bike doesn't run right, our concentration and reflexes are dulled, or muscles we use for nothing else have atrophied and joints stiffened. All the longings and tensions, coiled so tightly as the bitter months dragged on, now strain for rapturous release during our initial outing, but the glory usually falls short. Even if everything goes well, no single ride can quench the accumulated desire. Satisfaction must be amortized over the coming weeks and months. How then could anyone ever expect to extract gratification commensurate with the life-altering significance of a last ride? I doubt it's possible. Not even close. Perhaps the fortunate soul is able to relish a note or two of the chord, or even a verse of the song. Though profoundly limited, this may still be a profound event, destined to occupy a legitimately exalted place in the temple of nostalgia. It seems to me the best anyone can actually do or hope for in the end. Given this reality, I might need to rethink my position on approaching each ride as though it's my last. If I aim to hit just a small but priceless target, accepting its incompleteness, transience, and lack of purity, if I grieve the absence of perfection and permanence in this activity as in all activities, then it can unfold in a way both beautiful and genuine. This is the ideal approach to much of life, and the last ride, either actual or merely potential, should be no exception. Then it's okay. Each outing can contain only a dose of the treasured elixir, the entirety of which must be distributed in drops and gulps throughout our riding lifetime. We cannot consume it all on any one ride, or any 100 rides, for that matter. Maybe there is a good way to consider every ride our last. Let's just say our last ride began the day we first swung a leg over a motorcycle, and we continue it whenever we repeat that motion.
The BMW MOA Foundation is a 501(c) nonprofit dedicated to improving rider safety by providing programs supporting motorcycling and its rich heritage. The Foundation's mission is built to provide and promote programs for first-time riders, with an emphasis on youth, women, and families, and to support a variety of educational and training programs related to safe motorcycling. The Foundation has two prominent programs, the Paul B. Scholarship and Safe Miles. The Paul B. Memorial Scholarship Fund honors the memory of Paul Bayshores, an avid motorcyclist with a big heart and a love for his BMW riding community. The Paul B. Scholarship awards grants to individuals in the motorcycle riding community to help them pursue rider education and training. MOA members can receive up to a $250 grant for successfully completing any sanctioned motorcycle training course. Anyone who is not an MOA member can receive up to $100. Once you've scheduled and paid for your approved training course, submit your application to paulb@bmwmoaf.org. It's important to note the application must be submitted before the training course is completed. The MOA Foundation's Safe Miles program is in the process of establishing a $1 million endowment to fund the future of rider safety, education, and training. Donors to the Safe Miles endowment receive special benefits like a 1-year renewal of their MOA membership, automatic entries to Foundation raffles, a donor dinner at the National Rally, a Foundation polo shirt, and more. Learn more and make your donation to the Foundation now by visiting the Foundation's website at bmwmoaf.org and clicking on Safe Miles.
I like to use energy drinks because they not only, depending on which ones you get, but they'll have some electrolytes in there, which you're losing. That's why your sweat is salty. Yeah, because you're losing sodium, and electrolytes are critically important for the central nervous system, including the brain. So I like to refresh my supply of those, and sometimes having a little bit of glucose in the mix is welcome as well. Yeah, so that I quick energy. Have some more energy without the caffeine. Yeah. Last summer when I rode to Montana and back, and I forget the brand now, or I would say it, but I got these packets of electrolyte powder, and you dump them into a bottle of water and shake them up, and then it's like your own personal energy drink. Mm-hmm. And that's because I'm trying to
monitor my sugar intake. I'm kind of constantly in a battle to lose weight. So I try to eliminate as much sugar as I possibly can. So that particular electrolyte powder worked out very well for me. It wasn't the best tasting stuff because there was no sugar in it. But it was effective. And on the very last day of my trip last year, I did a Saddle Sore 1000. I rode almost 1,200 miles in about 21 and a half hours to get my Iron Butt Association first certification. I've done rides like that before, but I never did the paperwork and the documentation to get the certification. And I did exactly that. I stayed away from soda. I don't drink coffee, so that's easy for me. I usually get my caffeine from sodas and tea. And I use those every other time I drank water, I used one of those electrolyte packets just to make sure that I was staying hydrated, because I didn't want to get 100 miles from home and be exhausted and have to quit.
Right. Well, another thing about heat exhaustion, not only does it impair you in the moment, but your next day is probably going to be pretty poor too.
Yeah.
And so even if you're able to make it all the way in to the rally, you may not have much fun the first day you're there while your body's recovering.
Yeah. Yeah. And I didn't used to know what heat exhaustion was. I'd heard the term, but it didn't really make sense. It was super abstract. And I went to the rally in Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania, which if you talk to anybody who's been in the MOA for a while and has gone to a number of rallies, they remember Bloomsburg because it was just murderously hot. This is back when we had the rallies in the middle of July, and it was a particularly brutal summer on the East Coast. And it was just unbelievably hot. And I had traveled there with some friends of mine, and we were staying in a local college that had opened up its dorm to rally attendees. And I had exact directions. I had my GPS, and I led us on a tour of downtown Bloomsburg because I couldn't figure out where to turn. I couldn't make the turn. Wow. And when we finally got there, my friends were like, listen, you need to sit down and drink some water and cool off and relax. And one of them had a thermometer, one of those push it into your head for thermometers. And, my temperature was over 100 degrees, but I knew I didn't have a fever. I wasn't sick. I was on the verge of heat exhaustion, and that's and so now I know to pay attention to it, because it's one of those mistakes that I made by not staying hydrated, by not paying attention. I didn't have a vented jacket. The vented or mesh I was wearing. I had a waxed cotton jacket. It was super inappropriate for the weather, but it was all I had at the time. But I didn't even unzip it, until it was already too late, or unclip the sleeves so air can go up the sleeves or anything like that. So I might be a little more sensitive to that than other people because it's happened to me. So I mentioned saddlebags. So I want to give you some tips on that because, I
am a notorious overpacker. When I have gone on tour before, oh my God, if you saw pictures, I mean, it looks like, in the cartoons where the hillbillies have strapped all their furniture and giant sacks of things to the beat up jalopy. I mean, that's what I have looked like in the past. I'm determined not to do that this time.
Yeah. Well, helpfully, the saddlebags on your R1250 RS are not massive. So you almost can't. You can overpack your bike, but you might not be able to overpack for the trip. Are you going to throw a duff? Do you have a top case on that? You have a top case on that, right?
Yeah, it's not the BMW luggage. It's a shad top case. And then I also have a tank bag that I'll be using.
All right, cool. So I ride a GS, and very kind of stereotypically, I have aluminum panniers on it. So they're big enough that they're easy to overpack. And what I've learned a couple of tricks over the years, which is, first and foremost, LD Comfort undershorts, because it's light compression and that really helps you ride comfortably. But at the end of the day, you turn them inside out, you wash them out in the sink, you throw them over the shower rail, and they, or roll them up in a towel a couple of times and squeeze out the excess water. And by morning, they're dry enough to put on. I actually have 2 pair that I travel with, and I rotate them. So I use them one day and then I rinse it out. And then the next day I use the other pair. And those things have made a world of difference to my comfort level when I travel. Plus, it means I don't have to take a bunch of cotton underpants, right? Or even performance underwear. I can just take my LD Comfort stuff, and as long as I remember to be diligent and wash it out each day, it's got something in the material that helps it not
like antimicrobial.
Yeah. Antimicrobial stuff that helps it not smell. And for a trip, especially a trip of a week or a week and a half, that's really all I need. If I know I'm not going to be off the bike very long any days, then that's all I'll take. So that helps cut down on the amount of stuff already that I have to take. And then I try to remember that you can do laundry. There's nothing that says one of your half days that you're planning on not riding, you can't go into town and find a laundromat. I have yet to be to a rally town that didn't have a laundromat within a few miles of the rally site. And I've done laundry at almost every single rally that I've been to. And if you're staying in a hotel, if it's a large enough hotel, they probably have laundry facilities in the hotel that you're staying at. So it's easy to do laundry on the road. You have to make the time for it. And sometimes people don't want to make time, but you don't need to take a ton of t-shirts and underwear and socks and all that kind of stuff. You just need a few days worth, because, you're riding, you're already going to stink a little bit. And as long as, you kind of keep up your personal hygiene, your clothes aren't going to be that gross, and then if they do get gross, you stop at a gas station and some old lady looks down her nose at you and wrinkles it up. Okay, now I know tomorrow I need to stop at a laundromat somewhere and do a load of laundry. So that helps you not just kind of manage your pack out. But one of the things that we tend to do is we fill the space. We fill the space we have, and that's just what we do. So what I try to do is I try to decide what I need to be in each saddlebag. And then I know how much space I've got to fill. So I know, for instance, I have to travel with a camera and a laptop and some other electronics. So I put those in a backpack, and I put that backpack in one of my side cases. And along with that, I put my motorcycle cover. I got a little half cover that packs down really tight, and some warming layers. I usually bring a sweatshirt and a flannel shirt, so cool and cold. And then my rain gear and whatever liners for my mesh gear that I'm traveling with. And I'll cram those into a stuff sack and compress that down really tight. And that usually takes care of one saddlebag, but it's not full all the way to the top. And I bring a tool kit, a GS911, a tire kit, a compact pump, because what I'm paranoid about is getting a flat tire in the middle of nowhere and no cell coverage, and I can't even limp my bike out of the desert. So I like to be able to patch a tire, plug a tire really, and then, get to the next town to assess the damage. And then I'll use a top case as well. And that's where I keep, sunscreen and a ball cap and, that kind of stuff. But one of the things I tell people is to get all of your stuff together before you have to go, the weekend before, a few days before, and practice load your bike. Pack all the stuff where you think you want it. And then see how full it is. And once you realize that you've already overpacked, take everything back off the bike, take half of it and put it back where it was in the drawers or in the closet, and then re-practice pack your bike. Just leave half of your stuff at home, because I think if you try to make the first cut while you're picking out your stuff to go on the trip, you're going to be unsuccessful. So just throw it all in and see what you can do. And then when you realize you've got too much stuff, take half of it out and put it back. But also, I think something that people don't think of while they're traveling is, so you're going to take 2 days to get to the rally. You're going to be at the rally Thursday, Friday, Saturday. You're going to head home on Sunday. You probably get back on Monday. So you're going to be gone Tuesday through Monday. That's almost a full week, right?
Right.
So let's say you get to the rally on Wednesday and you realize you have too much stuff, but you're only going to be there for a few days. So you might as well just suck it up. Well, what happens if you buy a new tank bag at the rally? Mm-hmm. Now you've got the tank bag on your bike and the tank bag you just bought. And sure, you could probably cram it into your side case, but then stop at a post office, put a bunch of stuff in a priority mail box and mail it home. Mm-hmm. And I think just a lot of people, one of the things I always do when I'm done traveling, when I'm making the turn for home and I know I'm going to be home in 3 days or 4 days or whatever, I will mail all of my laundry home and just keep enough, a couple of pairs of socks, my LD Comfort, 2 t-shirts, and I just mail everything else home in a box marked "Do Not Open," so that my wife doesn't accidentally open it and think less of me as a result. I like to buy souvenirs. I buy t-shirts at national parks for my daughters. And I don't lug those things. Usually what I do is after I leave the national park, I stop in the first town I get to, go to the post office, and I mail that stuff to them immediately. I just so it never sits in my saddlebags for very long. And I like to have a little bit of extra space because you never know, maybe the motel you're staying at doesn't have anything near it, and you got to pick up dinner and, a couple of beers for the night. You want to have someplace to put that without having to repack your whole bike. So if your saddlebags are already stuffed, you got nowhere to put anything else.
Right. Right.
So I try to, and that's something I learned again through trial and error. It never occurred to me that I could do laundry on the road until I realized I had been gone for 3 weeks and everything I had was filthy. And at that point it was wet because one of my saddlebags had leaked. And now what am I going to do? And one of the people I was staying with, a friend of mine that lived in Wisconsin, was like, why don't you just do a load of laundry downstairs? And it had literally never occurred to me that I could do laundry away from home. And I was lucky there. I did laundry in his basement, but then that kind of triggered it. And every once a week or so, I stop into town. I go to the coin laundry, get $5 worth of change, buy some detergent, and do my laundry. It's also a good time. I don't just sit there and stare at the wall. That's a great time to, if you journal while you travel, that's a great time to journal. If you don't, that's a great time to catch up on your email. If you have access to Wi-Fi or something like that, there's a lot of stuff you can do while you're waiting for your laundry. And then, sometimes now I know I'm going to mail stuff home. So last year, I bought several things at the rally and I just mailed them home on my way out of town. And not only did it lighten the load on my bike, it lightened the load on my mind, which I think a lot of people discount how much mental energy you expend on a lengthy trip, because you're not just riding from place to place. You're also living your life. You've still got the same stressors that you had at home, only you're not there to deal with them. So sometimes that can weigh even more heavily on you. So if you're worried about what's in your saddlebags, that chips away at your attention. That chips away at the amount of mental presence that you have to pay attention to riding and being safe and getting home alive. So if you're stressed that your saddlebags are stuffed full, mail some of your stuff home. Just offload it, because it doesn't just offload your bike. It offloads your mind, man.
Yeah, well, actually, those are the same things in this regard, that a lighter bike is easier on your brain while you're trying to ride as well.
Yeah.
So the heavier and more out of kilter your bike's, center of gravity and all of that is, the more challenging and demanding it's going to be every minute you're on it.
Yeah. So let me ask you another question. You mentioned earlier that you have a Zumo XT. That's your GPS unit. When's the last time you updated the maps?
It actually automatically updates every time I turn it on, because I turn it on in the garage and it's still close enough to get the Wi-Fi. And I don't have to actually think about that.
Yeah. Well, if you're like me and you don't have a super special Zumo XT that updates itself, so I try to about a week before my trip, I'll update my GPS unit just to make sure I have the most recent maps on it, and also so that it's updated to the most recent firmware and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
And it's been a long time since I traveled with paper maps as a backup, because, GPS is satellite,
Mm-hmm.
So I don't really worry about it too much. But I can still remember when I traveled only with paper maps and then with maps as backup, and those kinds of things. Let me ask you this then. Do you have a plan for if something goes wrong and there's an emergency?
You mean a plan like who would I call, or how would people find out that I was
all
disabled or something?
Yeah, all of those things.
Well, it has been on my mind. I have not made it explicit yet, but I have been thinking about it. What tips do you have for that?
Well, a lot of people like to travel with a tracker, like a Spot or a Garmin InReach or something like that. I used to have a Spot. I still have it. It just doesn't work anymore. And that was very comforting for a lot of people. They could just kind of see where I was on the trip. And it has a little button that says okay, and you hit that button and it sends an email to your people that says, Mark is okay. Well, not in your case, it would. In my case, it would have said, Wes is okay. And since I don't use that now, what I do is I turn on location services on my phone, and I make sure that my wife can track where I am from her phone, so she can look that up anytime she wants to. And I try to remember to text her at the end of the day that I'm wherever I am. I'm in Winslow, Arizona for the night, just so she has an idea where I am. And if she doesn't hear from me for a couple of days, she knows the last place I was, which is a good place to start looking.
Right.
I've also done at least on an iPhone, and I'm an iPhone person, so I don't know about Android phones. There's a way to get emergency contact information right from the lock screen of any iPhone. That's all anybody can access. And they train EMTs and firefighters and police how to find this information. Right. So I just make sure that that's updated with my important medical information and my important contacts. Because frankly, if you find a downed motorcyclist somewhere and they're unconscious and unresponsive, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to look for a phone and you're going to look for ID.
Yes.
That's just how that works. So, I have that. I also have I think I mentioned earlier, I have a medical repatriation service called SkyMed.
SkyMed. Yeah. I've used them before, and I haven't had to be airlifted out of anywhere, but I have subscribed to them before. Yeah. It's remarkably inexpensive.
Yeah. Yeah. And
just unbelievably cheap.
For me, it's one of those things. It offloads it from my mind. I know that I'm not I'm, especially in modern times, I'm actually more worried about getting sick on a trip than I am crashing, because crashes are going to happen eventually to many people. And it's just kind of one of those things. I try to be alert and heads up and ride defensively and avoid crash situations. But if I crash, I crash, and that's just kind of the way it is. But if I get appendicitis, I don't want to have to recover at a hospital in Kansas where nobody's going to come visit me and there's nobody to take me home when they release me. And then the next thing I have to do after appendicitis surgery is get on a motorcycle and ride 1,600 miles back home.
Yeah.
So to me, that's the real value of those services, like SkyMed and MedJet is another one. And for the peace of mind too. And it's not just for me, it's for my family, because they know that if something happens to me, they don't have to immediately figure out how to get halfway across the country to come and help me. They know that SkyMed is going to get me home and put me in a hospital in Richmond, 12 miles from my house, and I've never had to use the service, but I know people who have, and nobody has ever said anything other than they did exactly what they said they would, and they got me home. And I always get the bump to get my bike home as well. So that way I don't have to go back to Kansas and retrieve my motorcycle or try to help somebody figure out how to ship it. And from my perspective, even if you only go out of town once a year, it's worth it. And I just went ahead and got the family plan because, it wasn't that much more expensive. And, now I know that if my daughter goes out of town or my wife goes out of town, then they can benefit from that service too. Although I will say, SkyMed will not transport you if you are positive for COVID. My daughter went out of town last year and got COVID. And that was the first call I made. Even though she didn't end up in the hospital, I wanted to know what we could do if she did. And they're like, if she's in the hospital with COVID, we absolutely will not transport her until she's, past the quarantine period, et cetera, et cetera. Right. So that's just a thing to know. And that, it seems reasonable to me. You don't want to put somebody with COVID on an airplane because then you spread it to everybody else. But, other than that, they take care of you. And if I was to travel internationally, which I don't do, I would, call them and say, how do I get international coverage? And I would pay for that too. Because it's another one of those things, you just offload it from your mind. And, that's a good time to, make sure you have a health insurance card for your health insurance, information. It's always a good idea to take pictures of documents like that with your cell phone, your vaccination card, your health insurance card, kind of even your driver's license. You can always delete them and, even reformat your phone if you're really paranoid when you're done with your trip. But it's good to have those things in a second location. It used to be, I used to travel with a photocopy of my driver's license and a photocopy of my registration and all that kind of stuff. And now I just, I take a picture of it. And I did about 4 years ago. I was on a trip 5 years ago and I lost my wallet. But I had pictures of my driver's license, my credit card, both sides of my credit card. So I had the number because when you lose your credit card, how do you call your credit card company? Right. So, but I had a picture of the front and back of my credit card. I called the number and told them what was going on. But after I lost my wallet, I got pulled over. And of course, the first thing that the police officer says is license and registration. I said, well, I got a funny story for you. I lost my wallet. I think I left it at a gas station 2 days ago, but I have a photo of my license and my registration and my insurance card on my phone. And he was like, oh, okay. Well, I said, can I text them to you? and that's exactly what I did. I texted my cards to the cop, and he gave me my ticket, and we both got on down the road, and of course he did remind me that I needed to replace the hard copy of my license. And I was like, yeah, I'm not coming back to Pennsylvania. It was the Bloomsburg rally. That's what it was.
That was a fateful trip.
Yeah, that was interesting. So that worked out really well. And now I do that on pretty much all my trips. Right before I go, I take a picture of my documents. And then when I get back, I delete them because I don't need to leave them on there permanently. Plus, if they're a year or 2 years old, you have to scroll for 25 minutes to find them. And that's not easy. And another thing you can do, especially as an MOA member, is put the anonymous app on your phone.
I got it.
Good. And so going along with that is keeping your anonymous information updated in the system. So you log into bmwmoa.org and you log into your profile and you just keep your information updated. And, it's one of those things that we hope you don't ever have to use it, but it's nice to know that you can if you're in a bind somewhere and, you've broken down or your bike is got a flat or, I honestly like to call people and just say, hey, listen, I'm in this town. You're near here. Is there any place that's good to eat? I'm feeling Italian tonight. What's the best Italian restaurant in the town? And a lot of times they'll go, oh, well, if you can wait for an hour, I'll meet you there. Mm-hmm. And then I get to talk to somebody else that's in the MOA and we get to have dinner and, hang out and I get to meet somebody new and, and eat at a decent place. Cause it's always kind of a crapshoot when you roll into town. It's hard to tell the good Mexican place from the crappy one just by looking at the outside. And that if you're not into smartphone and apps and all that stuff, you can get a hard copy. We do it on an opt-in basis now where you have to actually ask for the hard copy. But the app is super easy to use. And I'm not just saying that because I helped develop it. We tested it with people who aren't particularly tech savvy and got the sign off from them on its operation. So it works out pretty well. And I consider that is a critical piece of emergency equipment as far as I'm concerned. I have yet to be in a bind somewhere that an MOA member couldn't at least connect me to somebody who could help, give me an option. I can't help you, but call this person and maybe they can, go ahead.
I was just going to say, since I learned about it, I thought it was the coolest element of being an MOA member.
Yeah. I'm glad to hear that. And then I guess probably I mentioned a little bit, just briefly at the very beginning of our conversation about budgeting. I like to take a little bit of cash. I don't travel with a lot of cash because I don't feel comfortable just rolling down the road with a pocket full of, a giant bankroll in my pocket. But it is nice to be able to have a little bit of cash. Like if you have to tip a tow truck driver, sometime or, you go someplace and their internet is down and they can't, charge their square swiper on the counter. Right. You can just pay cash and get out the door. That kind of thing. And, I'll tell you when we're offline, I'm not going to tell everybody where I hide my cash. But there's, I'm one of those people. I'll hide a little bit on my body and I'll hide a little bit on the bike, in places that I can get to. And, sometimes I forget about it. I sold a bike a couple of years ago and, was going through it just to make sure I had included all the things I'd promised to include. And I found a $100 bill in a Ziploc baggie that I had taped to the frame underneath the seat behind one of the trays. I was like, ooh, score. But I always tell people to budget for about 50% more than you think you're going to need if you possibly can, because then if you go over, you're not heartbroken or crestfallen or stuck, because you overspent a little bit. So I try to, and I kind of do it from the other direction. I, figure out how much I think I'm going to need. And then I try to save up twice as much as that, and knowing that I'm probably only going to get halfway to that goal, so that works out pretty well for me. But I also have the benefit of being able to plan for these trips pretty far in advance, especially the summertime stuff to the rally. Cause right now, this episode won't be out until probably the first week of June. But next week, in the middle of May, we're going to announce where the 2023 rally is. And that gives people tons of time to plan. And if it's all the way across the country from you, which it will be for some people because it's going to be east of the Mississippi next year, then you have a whole year to kind of start managing your budget. And it's a lot easier, I've found, to save, a little bit every month than to get 2 months out from the rally and have to come up with a lot.
Sure. Well, I've been looking over my notes as we've been talking to see, make sure we covered all the bases that I had in mind. One of the things I'll highlight here from an article of yours. You did a couple articles on, let's see, what was the catchy title? Motorcycle Travel 101, a primer for spending weeks or months on your bike. And it was a 2-part series. And if anybody wants to review it, let's see, it was in May of 2019 and June of 2019. And one of the things that you mentioned in there, which I thought was quite clever, was using the uphill pannier for the stuff that you need to carry into the hotel with you at night. And that may seem like a pretty minor thing, but it's exactly the kind of economy of effort that makes travel better.
Yeah.
By uphill pannier, I'm talking about the one on the other side from the kickstand, so that it's easier to get to when your bike's in the parking lot. And if that's the one you're going to be carrying in, it automatically limits how much you can pack that you're going to be using on a nightly basis.
Yep.
And you had your tools and what else did you put in the downhill pannier? Your tire repair kit and your rain gear. Anyway, the stuff that you don't need at night goes into the kickstand side pannier, and that one can just stay on the bike.
Yeah, exactly.
No reason. I mean, assuming it's lockable. That was a nice insight, and I will certainly be doing it that way.
Yeah, and especially since your bike has side opening saddlebags on it.
Right.
So if you have to be careful when you open the downhill saddlebag or everything falls out.
Yeah. Well, I did buy the liners, so
smart.
I'll be able to just, I actually won't be carrying the saddlebag itself in. I'll be carrying the liner in, but yeah.
Which is way easier, as the, like I said, I've got aluminum, saddlebags on my GS, and they're sturdy and they're well affixed to the bike. They are not the easiest things to get off. So I like to have bags inside the bags that I can just grab and take inside. And it's kind of funny that you bring that up, because I developed that practice when I had a bike with side opening saddlebags, and I kept doing that with my next bike. And then with the bike I have right now, they changed the side that the muffler is on. So now the muffler is on the uphill side. So I have to be a little more careful about what I put in that side, because I don't want anything to melt. So for instance, if you take medication, you don't want to store that in the saddlebag next to the muffler, because medication is often affected by heat.
Good point.
Yeah. And especially if it's a capsule or a gel tab or, something like that, you don't want it to melt. And then you're stuck in Cleveland with no medication. You got to start calling doctors to get a refill and et cetera, et cetera.
Your medication has become one large blob at the bottom of the bottle.
Yeah. Like, especially at night, if all you have to do is crack that lid open and pull out the liner and walk into your, motel or your friend's house or whatever, it's so much easier. And, I kind of figured that out a long time ago on my second cross country trip, because my buddy that I was riding with at the time, he had just had a pair of throwover saddlebags, and he had to take them off the bike every day because he had just kind of crammed all his stuff in them. So he could like reach in and pull out a pair of socks, but he couldn't reach in and pull out all of his socks because they'd go everywhere. And so every time that we stopped for the day, it took him, 8 or 10 minutes to undo his saddlebags. And I'm standing there with my Givey case in my hand, tapping my foot, wishing he'd hurry up because I'm ready to go, and then in the morning, he had to reverse the process and tie him back on. And one day we were in a hurry and he burned a hole in one of his bags because he didn't properly secure it, and he lost some of his gear that came out the hole. And we had to spend 2 bottles of water putting out the fire.
Wow.
Yeah, it was exciting. But yeah, so it's just one of those things that I kind of found almost by accident. And those are my favorite kind of things to share because, a lot of the tips that I've garnered from hardcore travelers over the years are things just like that they discovered, out of necessity almost. It doesn't really change the nature of the trip. It just makes it so much easier, and especially think about it in the morning. You pack your liner in the hotel room, you walk out, you put it on the bike. You don't have to rearrange it. You don't have to mess with it. It's already done. If it's raining, you don't have to do it in the rain. If it's blazing hot at the end of the day, you don't have to fart around with a bunch of stuff in your saddlebag. You just grab the bike, grab the bag, and go in where the air conditioning is already on. And it just makes things a lot quicker when you're kind of either ready to go or ready to not go.
Yeah.
I'm glad you picked up on that.
Well, is there anything else that you had hoped to cover?
Well, let's see. I think, if I was gonna wrap up, I would actually like to wrap up by asking you a question. Okay. Because one of the things that I know I've had difficulty dealing with is one of the mental aspects of going on a trip, which is, the first time I went cross country, I went to Alaska because I had always wanted to ride to Alaska, and I thought that would be a cool thing to do. I spent almost 8 weeks on the road by myself, meeting people, talking to people, that kind of thing. But I made my own decisions. I didn't have to think about anybody else. I didn't have a spouse or a family. I sent my mother some postcards occasionally, just letting her know I was alive. This is before cell phones. I solved my own problems. I dealt with everything myself. And then when I got home, I had to go back to work and I had to deal with my roommates. And, I almost resented the end of the trip because I felt like I lost that sense of responsibility for myself. And now I'm being pulled in a bunch of different directions. So I wanted to ask you, what are some tips that maybe you could give me on how to prepare myself for reintegrating into my life after a trip, especially a long trip?
Wow. Well, if there was any doubt whether or not these interviews are unscripted, I'll put them to rest right now because I was not prepared for this question.
Sorry about that. I really just kind of thought of it.
Yeah, well, it's a good question. And if I come up with a good answer, I may write a column about it. But let's see what comes to mind. Well, first of all, one of the things that I have not returned from multi-week motorcycle trips and then had to deal with re-entry into regular life. So I don't have any direct experience to draw on of a specific nature like that. I've certainly come home from vacations and really been bummed out about having to, go back to mundane reality. And I do think that there's something about the excitement of travel that, it's almost like, I'm speaking metaphorically here.
Sure.
Okay. So I don't want any real neuroscientists to write in about how I got the science wrong on this. It is as though, and maybe it is true, maybe neuroscientists can write in and say, I actually guessed correctly, but it is as though, the dopamine, production in the brain goes way up. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter that's associated with rewards.
Okay.
So, when we're happy about stuff, or we get a charge from something, it's associated with the release of dopamine. And, so when we're doing exciting things and we're cranking out a lot of dopamine, there is a kind of recalibration that takes place, I'm guessing. And just like when you're smoking meth every day, your body recalibrates, and you need more meth, or you at least need to make sure you get your meth every day. And I'm certainly not trying to make light of addiction, but it is it is a similar phenomenon. I think when we're on a high over the course of a vacation or a long trip, and then, we come back, and I'm guessing it's actually true that our brain chemistry is a part of that sort of post travel depression that sets in.
Yeah.
Because we're not getting that even at a neurotransmitter level. And, but we have to reacclimate to, you put it in terms of you were responsible for yourself, on the trip. And I was responsible. Yeah. There's nothing inaccurate about that, but I doubt it's the responsibility that was exciting. It was the autonomy.
Yeah.
You had nobody impinging on you, nobody tugging on you. You didn't have to coordinate your schedule with other people.
Yep.
All of that.
You're 100% correct. I couldn't think of that word, and that is a much better word.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, we have to reacclimate to, now, I certainly don't think this is true in a global sense, but there is some truth to the saying, hell is other people. And I think that people who like to travel on motorcycles are probably more likely to subscribe to that than most, because it is such a solitary escape.
Yeah.
And there aren't other people impinging on us. We really are free. But then we have to tuck back into life, encumbered by other people around us who we may even value and love, but there's something nice about the freedom and the range of motion that one has when other people aren't involved.
Yeah.
No coordination is required. How do you prepare to give that up after you've had a taste of it? I'm sorry, Wes. I think maybe you just have to resign yourself to the fact that when you return, it's going to suck for a while.
Yeah.
And,
but even that helps because, when you know to expect difficulty, that sometimes makes it easier to accept the difficulty and manage it.
Yes. And to know that it is a transient phase.
Right.
So not only can you expect to be, to have some post-travel blues, but you can expect that they will pass too.
Yeah.
And a few days later, you will have reacclimated to the lower levels of dopamine elicited by your routine existence, and things will feel better.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I'll take that into advisement. Well, I will see you at the rally. I'm really excited about it. I love going to the rally. I call it the biggest family reunion on two wheels. I enjoy it every single year, even though it's a lot for me. It's a lot of people. It's a lot of talking to people, which you'd think I would be really comfortable with. But it is hard for me on some levels. So, it's like, I love gatherings, but, not so much all the time, but I love the MOA rally for so many reasons. And I'm always excited to bring new people. So I'm glad that you were willing to come. I know I encouraged you to come. So, but ultimately you had to make the decision. So I'm really excited that you're going to be there.
Yeah, I appreciated your encouragement, but yes, I certainly wanted to sample it for myself anyway.
Well, cool. I will talk to you again soon, and we'll get some more episodes out over the summer. And hopefully we can start getting some folks to write in with some more questions. Maybe this will spur some folks to ask some questions. And I look forward to seeing you soon.
Sounds great. Thanks for being willing to share your knowledge with me and with the rest of our listeners.
Oh, yeah, anytime.
We'd love to answer your questions too, so send them to podcast@bmwmoa.org. Visit our website at therideinside.com to listen to every episode of the podcast and read more of Mark's writing on various motorcycle-related topics. The best way to support The Ride Inside is by joining the BMW Motorcycle Owners of America. Yes, it says BMW right in the name, but we absolutely do not care what bike you ride. We know what's most important. The MOA is all about the community of riders, not a single brand. You can join as a digital member for $39 a year, or as a traditional member for $49 a year. The biggest difference is digital members don't get a hard copy of the monthly magazine in their mailbox. They access the BMW Owners News online. Each membership supports digital offerings like The Ride Inside, as well as everything else the MOA does. Find out more at bmwmoa.org. Ride along with us on the internet. The MOA and all its digital productions are on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We'll see you out there somewhere on the road, or off it. Ride safe.